Welcome, Dolphins fans, haters, and everyone in between to your favorite show, discussing the greatest franchise in sports, the Miami Dolphins. This is the PhinsPod. My name is Moose, your host, and some Dolphins fans really need to take a deep breath. Relax. The team was relatively inactive, especially when compared to the bottom two teams of the division during the tampering period to start off the week. We're going to get into all of that and Miami's moves, what they should do as the league year opens up today at 4 p.m., and of course, we're going to touch on some of the additions brought up to Foxborough. Without further ado, let's dive in.
Colts 2 for 2 on third down on this drive. Brissett looks both ways. Quick pass, that's complete. Going for the end zone is Zach Pascal for the touchdown.
Malcolm Brown stays in on a first down and goal. Brown again into the end zone.
For the majority of the 2010s, the Dolphins' off-seasons were defined by one common characteristic: flash and splash. There was no doubt that Stephen Ross had no qualms investing exorbitant amounts of his own money, and he would try to improve this team every way he could, but he would do it by just throwing money at the problem. And he would be spending money on past performance, and the deals inevitably would become huge burdens for the team. See Mike Wallace, Ndamukong Suh, Donnell Ellerbe, and Philip Wheeler. What the Dolphins learned through those mistakes was rather than bringing in high-priced free agents as these band-aids to deeper issues, they needed to establish a foundation. And this is the foundation that we have seen get established going back to 2019. And yes, that process hurt. There was a bloodletting. We had to strip our team down, open up our cap, and clean up house of all these bad contracts. Instead, Miami chose to bring in guys with clear familiarity, like Kyle Van Noy and Ted Karras, and the one big name that they did acquire through free agency in Byron Jones was a proven outside corner and a very unique need in the way that this defense is run. Having him is not like paying a lot for a guard or paying a lot for a defensive end. You know, Byron Jones's role in the defense is a lot more valuable, so it made sense why they threw a lot more money at a guy like him. But other than that, the Dolphins have chosen to add in terms of volume and take multiple shots at the board. Think Emmanuel Ogbah, Landon Roberts, Eric Flowers, Jordan Howard did not work out, and Shaq Lawson, who we just traded for Benardrick McKinney. And listen, none of these guys were too expensive, and ideally, all of these players are eventually replaced by homegrown talent found in the draft, cheaper, and developed in your own system. Think about guys like Jerome Baker, Mike Gesicki, Xavier Howard. The first two, Baker and Gesicki, coming up on contracts. Xavier Howard already being paid really highly, of course, deservedly so. Even a guy like Bobby McCain, homegrown talent. In order to establish continuity and actually be able to win over time, year in, year out, be that franchise that we have wanted to be for so long, you need to have guys outplaying their contracts. The reason for that is that you need to have them at the right time. You can't be paying them, for that past production. You need to hope that you're getting them on the good side of that contract and letting them walk when, yes, they might deserve to get paid, but for where you are as a team, you don't need to pay that guy because you developed and drafted a guy to replace him. So that's really important. And the Patriots operated that way for the better part of 2 decades. It's the philosophy that was brought down to Miami with guys like Chris Grier and, of course, Brian Flores. They would let guys go once that price got too high. See Logan Mankins, Ty Law, Asante Samuels, Randy Moss, Chandler Jones, Jamie Collins. The list goes on, even going all the way back to guys like Lawyer Malloy. The Patriots always get rid of guys a year too early before a year too late because they don't want to pay. Because they know that money comes around and they need to continue to invest in those positions that matter and just draft intelligently. Now, of course, the Patriots had a lot covered up by the play of Tom Brady, but in order to still have a good defense to support him, they needed to draft well and make sure that they were spending that money properly. And a lot of those players, Asante Samuel, Logan Mankins, Chandler Jones, almost all of them became, really good players for other teams down the line. But the Patriots were still able to win without them. You see this with the Packers as well. The Packers have built through the draft. And the criticism for them is, they don't spend enough. They need to spend more. However, the flexibility that they get from not spending has allowed them to keep many of their young homegrown talent. Obviously, of course, their quarterback quarterback, but that wasn't going to pay for Aaron Rodgers. But Devontae Adams and now Aaron Jones, and of course, developing Rashawn Gary. So with that philosophy in mind, that you don't want to overpay and it's better to build from within. And yeah, if your guy has earned that contract and he's going to get paid elsewhere, it's okay if it's not in your budget. Frankly, it's a good sign. It's a sign that your development works. So with that philosophy in mind, let's look at what the Dolphins have done so far. And to be honest, not too much. By the time you're listening to this episode, though, they've probably made some giant splash, making me look like a complete idiot. But we're going to have a follow-up episode tomorrow. So if anything does happen today while you're listening, we will be touching on it. However, it does appear that the market is still settling for a lot of position groups, which is why it's been so quiet, specifically wide receiver and edge. A lot of receivers aren't getting the money that they thought they would out there. They really felt like, they would hit these paydays. But because of the reduction in the cap, a lot of teams are sort of waiting and seeing the first team that really extends themselves for a receiver, for a Kenny Golladay or for a Juju. The Dolphins are not going to be that first team to do that. So since trading Shaq Lawson in return for Benardrick McKinney, the team really has only made a few moves. First, and we're barely going to really touch on this because no one really cares, but the Dolphins are moving on from Matt Haack, who had a strong leg, but was just really inconsistent. And although he did bring some elements outside of just punting the football, if you remember that touchdown against Philadelphia and that first down conversion pass to Kamu Grugier-Hill, which was unfortunately called back on a BS penalty against the Patriots, he did bring that element to the game, but that inconsistency is likely what eventually led to the Dolphins deciding to move on. Matt Haack has signed with Buffalo, so he's found a home. So hopefully we get to see him shank it a couple times a year. And to replace him, the Dolphins have signed former Panthers punter Matt Palardy. Palardy did not kick at all last season as he was out for the year, but he kicked for the Panthers from 2016 to 2019. So he has experience in the NFL punting the football. And he did sign a 3-year extension with them. So he had proven himself to them enough that they signed him to a 3-year deal. So that's good. He is left-footed, so the move is very New England. Flores is cut from the cloth, which looks for edges at every turn, constantly trying to find every chance to win. So the benefit of a left-footed punter, if you don't know, is similar to how people were saying that the Dolphins receivers may struggle to catch to his passes due to the change in rotation of the football. Well, that principle applies to punting as well, except instead of changing in rotation like a spiral, you get a change in rotation of the ball itself as it's flipping through the air. So that changes the bouncing pattern. It forces different adjustments for the returner. They're just frankly not used to seeing that sort of spin on a ball, and it's even harder to adjust to, when a guy is running down full speed to try to take your head off. So this can give you a few more muffed punts a season, and it's something Bill Belichick has been deploying for years, so it's no surprise that the Dolphins went and found themselves a left-footed punter. The other thing about Palardy is that he was formerly a quarterback in high school, and he has thrown a couple passes in the NFL, and the Dolphins website made sure to mention that. So they definitely want guys in the kicking game who can also help in their trickery and are true athletes themselves. Palardy's someone who Miami will likely try to use in trick plays. Again, Haack did have great chemistry with Jason Sanders, so you hope Sanders is a great professional and really just understands that business is business and keeps that going and has no mess up to his, the flow that he's developed with Matt Haack. Hopefully that continues and that doesn't get affected. But again, the move in and of itself, nothing major. It's just a punter. Vince Biegel was re-signed by the Dolphins, and the details of the deal are now out as of this recording, but considering that he was signed to a 1-year, $2.1 million deal last offseason, that was his tender, I would expect something in that range. And I know, some Dolphins fans are not big on Biegel due to some of his offseason behavior. He used a Jack Nicholson gif. It was a gif of him nodding in anger management, just that, nodding in excitement, like gimme kind of nod. And it was in response to a jersey swap that someone made showing Deshaun Watson in a Dolphins uniform. So he put that gif in kind of like, yes, please. And yeah, it's not ideal. considering that, that isn't the Dolphins quarterback right now. But Vince Biegel was hurt all year, and due to COVID, he's likely not really gotten to maybe meet and really build a relationship with Tua. So he's reacting more so as a fan, and Deshaun Watson is amazing. He is on a Hall of Fame trajectory, so hating on someone for being excited that, your team might potentially get him and acting a little, overzealous, if you're getting really upset about that, he didn't crap on Tua and say, he's better than our quarterback. He just responded to a picture of a potential Hall of Famer in the jersey of his own team in a favorable way. If you're getting really upset about that and don't want him back for that reason, I think that's a little childish, especially when you consider it doesn't really actually matter now that he's back. As long as he puts his head down and works, of course we're going to be happy to have him, and Tua won't care that he felt that way if Vince Biegel's able to contribute. And if he comes back and plays like crap, then yes, we can start to parade him. It just gives us more ammo. But for now, Miami got a good player with good value. He's coming off of an injury, and he has something to prove. After tearing that Achilles during training camp last offseason, Biegel has something to show. And he has that, he really wants to show teams around the league that he still has that explosive first step. And he proved to be a smart player with a high motor in 2019. He began to develop some good pass rushing moves and was consistently setting the edge for the Dolphins defense. And having him in the rotation, playing at a high level, if he can come back. Achilles injuries are really tough, but if he's able to come back, it would greatly benefit this defense. And again, especially at this price Miami got him for, it's another low-risk, potentially high-reward move. And if you've been listening to the pod for a few weeks, we touched on it possibly being an outcome that the Dolphins bring Biegel back. It just made a lot of sense. With the reduction in the cap, the familiarity with each other, it just made it likely that no other team would take a shot on him, and the Dolphins, knowing him, having had him in their system, would feel comfortable bringing him back at a good price. And especially if this investment pans out, overall, a great move. And then you can sign him to a potentially long-term deal, also more team-friendly, considering the current situation. That's best case scenario. Worst case scenario, he doesn't prove to be the player that he once was. He struggles to really get that next step. And for that reason, you can move on from him, and it's only a couple million against the cap. Nothing major. Next, the Dolphins brought in a likely special teamer in Cethan Carter. Carter signed a 3-year deal for $8.7 million with $2.7 million guaranteed. He is a tight end / fullback, but really more so, I would say, a tight end. And Carter is a 4th-year player who signed with the Bengals as a undrafted free agent out of Nebraska back in 2017. And he made the team's 53-man roster as a rookie and has sort of been there ever since as this hybrid, tailback and tight end. And this is a move that's closer to the likes of Clayton Fejedelem and Kavon Frazier. I doubt he gets many reps on offense, considering Miami does have Adam Shaheen, and they still do have Durham Smythe under contract. But Cethan Carter, if he shows promise in camp, then it could mean the end for Durham Smythe. I mean, I most likely see this as a special teams replacement, someone to be on the kicking game, and he can come in potentially, if, Smythe or Shaheen goes down. But in reality, he might have every opportunity to unseat Smythe with that third tight end spot. And, if Shaheen's able to bump up to number 2, considering they don't really have a lot of financial long-term investment in Durham Smythe, and he is limited physically. Cethan Carter is a much, much bigger athlete, a little more dynamic, and he did show flashes when he did play of having that higher ceiling. So this really could be a potential Durham Smythe replacement if Cethan Carter is able to kind of come in and show potential flashes that, he is a long-term fit at that tight end 3 position. The team then added some more depth to the offense. They signed Jacoby Brissett to a 1-year deal, as well as Malcolm Brown, formerly of the Rams. Starting with Brissett, he was brought to New England in 2016 via a 3rd-round pick. So he did come out of NC State with some promise. Brian Flores was there and saw his development firsthand, and there's a strong familiarity there. Brissett moved on to the Colts, where he actually saw significant playing time for them. He proved to be a decent player with a cannon of an arm and really good leadership qualities, but he just didn't have dynamic elements in his play. He's limited. His mobility is not the best, but he is a great option for being a backup. We talked about this on the pod before. Miami needed to find a reputable option to sit behind Tua. With Tua's injury history, having a veteran was the best way to go. And with Fitzy leaving us for Washington, and we're going to get more into that later in the show, but Miami needed to bring in a veteran leader who could help both Tua and the team if need be. So, listen, it was reported by a man who is so butthurt that he moved from South Florida to Massachusetts, Mr. Ben Volen, that Brissett received $5 million guaranteed with incentives potentially making that contract $7.5 million. Those incentives are likely tied to, starts and certain metrics that he would have to hit, and that would mean that Tua got injured. So if things do go well, then he's only set to make $5 million. So not bad for a backup, especially when considering Fitzy was making $8 million last season. The most recent move the team has made at the time of this recording has been running back Malcolm Brown. Brown, formerly of the Rams, is not that dynamic, not that shifty of a runner, but he hits the hole hard and has some speed for his size. 5'11", 225 pounds. He's a power runner. And considering the drafting of Cam Akers for the Rams, Brown became expendable, so it makes sense that the Dolphins were able to get him, and the Rams were not looking to bring him back. And also, they're really up against the cap, so there was no chance that they were bringing a second or third running back. But he's going to compete for carries with, Savon Ahmed and Myles Gaskin, and he does bring a different skill set that isn't had by any other Dolphins backs on the roster. That is, until they bring in Najee Harris or another guy through the draft who's more of a power back. So quickly going back to the Cethan Carter signing, he's the tight end / fullback from the Bengals that the Dolphins signed to that 3-year deal. That move was likely to fill the void left on special teams by Kamu, Grugier-Hill. And this is where we're going to jump into who left the Dolphins. What voids are now open that the Dolphins need to fill? And as we just touched on, KGH left the Dolphins. He signed a 1-year deal with the Texans. And that loss just adds more need to the linebacker depth. The Patriots, who have had one hell of a spending spree of their own. And look, to me, it smells like desperation. Not to mention that they just watched their ex walk down the aisle with the most badass mic drop ever. And they got caught with their pants down, having a horrible year. And it's bad times for New England all around. So they have been spending like crazy. And I would argue overspending. And that was done in the case of Davon Godchaux. He signed a 2-year deal to go up north to play for Bill Belichick. What a downgrade. Ryan Fitzpatrick, he's leaving the Dolphins, obviously, as we brought in Jacoby Brissett, but that was after Ryan Fitzpatrick made a decision to move on to Washington. This makes me so happy. To play for the football team, we get to now root for him in the NFC, and he's going to a team that needs a guy exactly like him. They're young, they need a veteran leader who can provide some guidance, and they also need a quarterback. Taylor Heinicke ain't it, so this is a great move for him and for them. So the Washington football team has been making smarter decisions as of late, and that's weird to say. So hopefully we see them win the NFC East again, and we're able to be rooting for Ryan Fitzmagic, from afar. But it's great to see that he's coming back, because there was word that he was planning on retiring. And to close out the show, I want to ease some of your concerns, specifically about the Patriots. Their extremely atypical behavior this offseason is being praised by many, but I see through all of this horse crap. When any other team spends out of the nose, it's usually a sign of poor drafting, poor roster management, or potentially, like in those rare cases of Tampa Bay, the franchise is trying to load up. They're going all in for a Super Bowl run. But are the Patriots trying to load up with Cam Newton? If so, well then, unless we're having some shared societal blindness, some shared societal illness where we're all in this delusion together, Cam Newton was washed. And you heard it here. It wasn't because it was 1 year in a new system. It wasn't COVID. It was not purely a lack of weapons. Cam Newton was throwing the ball at his receivers' ankles. He was late on reads, and his age was showing. Even as a runner, he looked slow. They bring in Davon Godchaux, Jonnu Smith, Hunter Henry, Kendrick Bourne, Nelson Aguilar, Dietrich Wise was re-signed, and then they bring in Matthew Judon. That last one was a good signing. I won't lie, that was a good one. But all the ones before that, and even with the upgraded weapons, they still need a quarterback to run the system. And I am not just concerned about Cam Newton. It's just not something that I would fear. It's just he's not someone who strikes fear. Despite all those weapons that you bring in, I'm not worried he can throw a 25-yard out. So just load up the box. The same thing's going to happen. And yeah, they might be able to take shots here and there, but Miami can absolutely handle the likes of Kendrick Bourne and Nelson Aguilar. And they saw both of them last season and managed them both pretty easily. So, plus considering that the Dolphins have experience going up against Hunter Henry too, So although the Pats have improved, all these pieces still need to gel. It's going to be year one of gelling together. So, hey, remember, we used to win the offseason all the time. So right now the Patriots are winning the offseason, and we felt like the signings we made would make a difference. In April and May, we were like, damn, we're going to win in the regular season now because we just won the offseason. But when push comes to shove, the teams who actually win during the season are the ones making smart moves and not overextending themselves. The Pats are now overspending, and I think their house of cards is going to be coming tumbling down.
Fitzpatrick looks the other way this time, and that's caught by Parker once again. And Gilmore meets him with authority.
Parker's lined up in the right slot with Gilmore over the top of him.
Fitzpatrick coming across. He's got his man. That is Albert Wilson. Fitzpatrick throwing outside. That is caught by Parker, and Parker out of bounds inside the 10.
No matter how much time is left, you're not anticipating giving up that touchdown.
2nd and 2. Fitzpatrick throwing, and that is to the 5-yard line and caught by Isaiah Ford. Fitzpatrick throwing over the middle. Touchdown! Mike Gesicki.
Well, the stadium got real quiet real quick.
Thank you guys so much for listening to the PhinsPod. That's going to do it for us here today. I hope you enjoyed the show. We're going to be having an extra episode of the pod tomorrow. So as free agency is officially beginning, we're going to want to make sure we get the latest information to you guys. So this week we're going to have a special Thursday edition. Stay tuned for that and subscribe now to make sure you don't miss it. Please remember to like the video if you watched on YouTube and if you enjoyed the show. And remember that the show itself is available on all platforms: Spotify, Apple and Google Podcasts, as well as here on YouTube if you're watching. Continue the conversation on Twitter and Instagram at PhinsPod, and check out the site for news and content, PhinsPod.com. I hope you guys have an amazing day. Hopefully this free agency period is wild and the Dolphins are bringing in some awesome players. But until next time, stay safe. Love y'all.